Okay, so it will be the last presentation before the coffee break. And then we'll come back for some other papers. The title of the next paper is Deactivation of Accelerated Engine Age in Field Age Iron Zeolite SCR Catalyst and the role of the diesel oxidation catalyst. It's a joint effort involving workers from the University of Tennessee and Oak Ridge, and the paper will be presented by Todd Toots, Oak Ridge.
Okay, well, I abbreviated that title a little bit because I was going to run out of room on the slide. So, deactivation of iron zeolite catalyst, as he said, and how the diesel oxidation catalyst plays into that. So it's going to be a little bit different take than what we've been talking about. I'm not going to talk too much about sintering, but I am going to talk about impact of that metals have on this type of deactivation. This is actually mostly the graduate work of Adam Foster and under his professor Kay Wynn at University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Bruce and I work at Oak Ridge and are also co-advisors on that. But and Nathan and Josh have been great help doing a couple more experiments to answer some of the questions that we have on this type of system. So a little background on SCR catalysts, why we're studying them. We've been talking about it for the past 2 days over in the environmental section, but I think we need a little background in this different environment. It's basically it's a leading candidate for NOx reduction for these lean exhaust systems, and whether it's you need to generate ammonia to make these SCR catalysts work. So whether you do that using a urea type system or a little more advanced system where you're generating it over an LNT, somehow you need to make ammonia to make this SCR catalyst work, and it'll work in excess oxygen. One of the things it does require is a diesel oxidation catalyst, because to get the best kinetics over this SCR system, you want to have this NO-NO2 mixture about half. And so you definitely want to have a diesel oxidation catalyst in front of your SCR, but where it actually is, whether it's in front of the SCR is in front of the diesel particulate filter or after, is still being considered. But we're going to mostly focus on this DOC, SCR, and DPF system in this approach. So, okay, so Bruce and I have been working mostly through the University of Tennessee on this accelerated aging type protocols, whether it's for diesel oxidation catalyst, and LNT, or a variety of things. It's kind of come to a head in this one because we're actually looking at it from a systems approach here, where we're going to do this thermal aging using a DOC, an SCR, and a DPF. So we're primarily using this, going to do this aging using an engine system. Of course, we want to compare what we're getting with this engine-based accelerated aging protocol to a simpler system, as hydrothermal aging and a bench flow reactor. So we're using some things where we're using an engine to create these exotherms, and other things where we're using a simple bench reactor to create these exotherms. And we want to compare how those are different. You know, ideally, you'd like to be able to do these aging in a bench reactor, but it doesn't often work out like that. Once we age these in this engine system, we are going to go back to the bench reactor to make sure we can make controlled kinetic evaluations of that catalyst and understand what has happened to that SCR system. And we're going to do a series of materials characterization on that as well to see what has been impacted during this thermal aging, if anything. So here's a little closer schematic of what our diesel engine system is. It's a single-cylinder engine, so it's a really small 500 cc engine, but we're actually running that with ultra-low sulfur diesel and just running that continuously at 1 RPM. To create our exotherm, we inject excess fuel into the exhaust, and when that fuel hits the DOC, the diesel oxidation catalyst, we create a large exotherm. And so that exotherm is carried through the SCR and the DPF. Instead of using urea in the system, we're injecting straight ammonia, and so the ammonia would be coming in here. And so that's just simpler, and it keeps it as a thermal aging study rather than a urea decomposition study. Okay, so first thing we did was looking at this bench reactor approach. If we just put this SCR catalyst in a bench reactor and take it up to 670 degrees C, which is basically following a protocol that's been established for hydrothermal hydrothermal aging in a bench reactor. We do this for up to 64 hours, and you can see we have very little effect. So this zeolite catalyst has been donated to us from a catalyst supplier. It's very robust under these conditions, so it can definitely maintain activity under these relatively simple deactivation conditions. And so what we found, however, when we went to an engine, that we saw quite a bit different type of deactivation. We actually saw two separate deactivation mechanisms. First thing we saw is taking these catalysts out of the engine. They were 6 inches long or 150 millimeters long. We cut them in half so we could look at them, how the front of that catalyst behaved and how the rear of that catalyst behaved. And when we look at the rear, we basically see when we age this at 650 or 750, we see a small drop in deactivity, somewhat similar to what we were seeing on the bench reactor. So that might be that was somewhat similar. Taking up to 850 degrees C on this zeolite system definitely causes some serious materials effects and definitely some degradation of performance. Now, when we took this, when we took the front section, we saw quite different activity effect. What we saw is even at a relatively low temperature of 650 degrees C, that we saw the activity come up at around 300 degrees C, hit a maximum, and then drop and never get above 30% conversion of NOx above that temperature. That was the similar case that we saw at 750, and 850 was even worse. So there's definitely two different deactivation mechanisms going on in the front of the catalyst and the rear of the catalyst. All right. So one of the things we always want to compare as we're developing these rapid aging protocols is how are we simulating anything that's happening in the field, and especially with using when we have a bench reactor aging mechanism or an engine-based aging mechanism, and we're getting different results. We want to see which one's giving us the results that are most commonly found in the field. And so our catalyst supplier had these field age samples that were basically run on a European bus for 3 years of service. It was their end of life of, so that's why they donated them to us. And what we see is that these field age ones are the solved lines, and the dashed lines are our accelerated age approach, and they're seeing the same effect that they saw in the field, where at the front you have this peak around 300, and it drops off, and the rear is behaving relatively well. So, okay, so let's start trying to figure out what's happening to these systems. We start doing a various characterization to answer this question. First thing we want to do is look at the X-ray diffraction pattern, see if we can see delumination of the zeolite sample, iron oxide coarsening, and basically what we found is that fresh sample being here on the bottom, going up 650, 750, 850. If we first looked at the zeolite, we have these nice strong features in the fresh sample, and when we start aging this, it does start to decrease. And at 850, we've definitely had a very large hit on our zeolite pattern there. We are seeing some additional iron oxide formation at this higher temperature, but this is on the front, and so when we actually look at the rear, we see about the exact same pattern. So there's not a big difference between the front and the rear on this. So we're definitely seeing these materials effects, and that can start to explain what happened at 850 and what's happening when we why we're seeing a little bit of deactivation at 650 and 750, but it's definitely not the whole story yet. So as you lose zeolite structure, you lose surface area. So we start looking at how the surface area is impacted. So this is the fresh sample. It's got about 55 meters squared per gram of catalyst, and that's including the cordierite and everything. We just take the sample, grind it up, and to get that area. So the actual zeolite would be quite a bit higher. If we go from 650 up to 850, we can definitely see a decrease in the surface area, and definitely we see a difference between the front and the rear sample. So this suggests that this might be why it's what we're seeing, but kind of the smoking gun here is that 650 we see the big deactivation, but we got about the same surface area here. So that's definitely not explaining what's happening at 650 in that front section. We also did some SEM to kind of see how the wash coat was attaching to the cordierite sample. And you can see, again, taking it up to 850, we can see some delamination happening from the wash field coming off of the cordierite there. But again, when we look at these front sections, when we look at 650, it's basically pristine. So it's definitely still not a thermal effect of the coarsening or the zeolite coming off of the cordierite. So it's got to be something else. So about the same time, got ahead of myself. So in the end, this is kind of a summary of what we're seeing. It's definitely something else, and so what we want to focus in is what's happening here at this 650. So about the same time we were seeing this, Ford was doing a series of studies and what they found is that platinum was volatilizing off of the DOC during this process, and so you have a significant amount. When you insert this exotherm, the platinum actually goes into the gas phase and can deposit on your samples down at the end. And so how much of that was happening was so much of a debate, especially since they were keeping it low temperatures. But what they found is using this ethylene hydrogenation to probe this platinum existence, they could determine that they had less than 0.001 weight percent of platinum on their samples, but it was enough to create a dramatic deactivation of the sample, similar to what we saw. And that's just primarily because of the activity of platinum has for ammonia oxidation, typically resulting in NO. So once your ammonia's gone, you can't do that. You can't do your SCR reaction. So, so what we did to probe that, rather than doing the ethylene, is let's look at actually what's happening to that ammonia oxidation reaction over this front of the catalyst. And so you can see that the fresh sample being here, we don't reach 50% conversion of ammonia oxidation until we get above 450 degrees C. But for this that front section of that engineered sample at 650, we're reaching basically 50% conversion at as low as 300 degrees C. So this is definitely falling in line with what we're seeing here. It's this volatilization of the platinum that can start depositing on that front of that catalyst. And that's, you can see right exactly reaching that peak here at 300. It's just right in line with where that happens. That's definitely what's happening on these samples. So the question we've had is how can platinum volatilize at such a low temperature? How can you get a significant amount at all coming off when you do that? Well, that's what the exhaust temperature does of the DOC. And actually, if you look inside of DOC, what temperature you're actually getting up to, you're going to be quite a bit higher. So this is a slightly different system, but something that we had data on you see we're introducing exhaust coming into, this is a Lenox trap that we did on a bench reactor, but if we have exhaust coming out at 650, to maintain that temperature there, we actually get above 900 degrees C. So you're basically getting very high exotherms inside the catalyst that is only resulting in a lower exotherm at the exhaust of the catalyst. So definitely something that has to be considered as decisions are going forward to decide how where you want to place SCRs in relation to DOCs or the like. So something else that we saw, as just a side note, was some of this selectivity during this ammonia oxidation, and it was pretty interesting. So as ammonia comes over the platinum, you make some NO, and then you have NO and some unoxidized ammonia. So you can actually start doing the SCR reaction with that NO and ammonia under these conditions. And so if you look at what's happening here, you can actually see the NO come up, and then as you create this balance and you have this high SCR condition, you have very little NO coming through at this point. But as you get to higher temperatures, you're oxidizing more of that ammonia to NO, and thus the NO starts coming up. So that's just kind of an interesting thing that jumped out at me. But in the end, what we've found in this study is that this accelerated aging approach that we used was able to replicate end-of-life deactivation conditions in a field age system. And we're able to do that in less than 50 hours. So it's something that was operating for over 3 years of life, we were able to do in less than 50 hours on this. We demonstrated there's two deactivation mechanisms. One, the materials effects that we create, that we talked about a lot with SCR systems, zeolite deillumination, structure collapse, surface area, iron oxide growth. But one of these of great concern is that platinum that could deposit from the DOC and definitely on the front of the catalyst. So in the end, this hydrothermal aging that we also did, that can be a good study of your overall zeolite strength of structure, but putting a whole system approach together and studying these catalysts is the best way to get a real, a total system answer for the system. And with that, I'd just like to acknowledge the support for this. DOE's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, Kevin Stork, Preet Singh, and Ken Howden all funded a portion of this work. And additional technical support with Jin Zhao did some NMR on this to help us understand some of that de-illumination, and another student, Will Brooks, here doing this. And of course, we couldn't have done any of this without our catalyst sponsor or provider, Catalytic Solutions, specifically Svetlana Irskaya. And with that, hopefully I'll be able to answer some questions.
Okay, we have time for some questions. Yes, please.
In the oxidation of ammonia to make nitric acid, where they use a platinum rhodium gauze, they get a lot of platinum volatilization. And I'm wondering whether or not you've done some experiments or would consider doing some experiments where you have NO or NO2 and air and bathe the catalyst at 650, 700 to see whether you get some platinum volatilization. It sounds like perhaps the same mechanism.
Okay, over the DOC and...
Yeah, doing the DOC, it sounds very much like the nitric acid gauze.
Yeah, okay. I'll consider that.
Yes, we have another question. Could you please use the microphone there and also identify yourself?
Enrico Rottoni for Technical Milan, Italy. I was surprised to notice that you did not detect a lot of N2O formation in your ammonia oxidation experiments with platinum added to the catalyst. Is that correct?
With this system here, yes, we have very little N2O formation down here.
Okay, because typically ammonia oxidation of platinum results in a lot of N2O.
So again, I think this gets back to how small the amount of platinum is on this, and so it's you definitely don't typically make this much N2 over it as well. And I think we're just oxidizing a very little amount of that. Well, we're oxidizing a significant amount of that ammonia, but we got the rest of the SCR catalyst to kind of clean up the products. If I employed Bill Partridge on this one, we could have got in there to maybe look at how this N2O and where the different form selectivity is as we go through the catalyst on a more differential approach. But just being a total integral, I think we're consuming it as we go through it.
Okay, just a related question. In the case of your aged catalyst, did you, during the SCR activity experiment, did you notice an increase in the selectivity to N2O with aging?
So part of this is that we do a lot of the work at University of Tennessee, and so with that system, we don't actually have an FTIR on it, so we're just looking at total NO conversion at that point using the chemiluminescence. So.
Okay, we have time for some more questions. Okay, if not, let's thank our speaker again.